The format for tonight, we have three speakers, and I'm going to introduce each of them, I believe, in the order in which they will be answering questions. So we'll do an introduction before each of their first answers. And we're going to request that you go to a 3 minute, try to keep a 3 minute time uh, limit on your answer. We can, be a little bit flexible, but we want to respect the equality of time for folks. And do about till about 6:45, go through the questions that we have outlined. And at that point, we'll open it up to questions and answers, Q&A from all of us in maybe a more open format for conversation for us all to share ideas based on what our own experiences and the things that will have been presented by them. So I want to start by sharing an image. Does that show up on your screen? I was here today and had the pleasure of being under this beautiful tree. I thought it might be a good image to start with. Tucson is seen as a leader in the movement for green infrastructure across the United States, for shade and beauty, carbon capture, traffic calming, cooling the urban heat island with rain-fed trees, shrubs, etc., brings life to our landscape, and it lifts our hearts as residents of this place, and the visitors here would enjoy it as well. So some of the questions that we're going to look at include things like what have we accomplished since the mayor announced the Million Trees campaign several years ago? What more can be done? What obstacles do we face as we try to keep things clean and green and cool? So we invite you to join us for a look at the promise, the progress, and what we can do to support this vital part of making Tucson sustainable. And with that, I am going to, Mead, would you like to go first? I'm going to ask, would you be willing to give the first answer to the question that I'm about to ask?
Sure.
Okay, let's see if I can get my ducks in a row here. All right, question number one. Um, oh, no, introduce. I'm sorry. Oh, boy. God, all right. Mead Mier Welburn is a member of the leadership team of the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative. In her role there and a nearly two-decade tenure as watershed planning manager at the Pima Association of Governments, Mead has fostered regional coordination for environmental and social well-being across the watershed. And I want to stop sharing just a moment. And our first question, what is your role in expanding and maintaining green infrastructure in Tucson and/or Pima County? For example, what lands, streets, and rights of way are under your purview, or what entities do you coordinate with, etc.? And without further ado, hear from Mead. And please mute if you don't want to share unshareable noises.
Thank you. And my screen looks frozen, but is it working for you all to hear and see me? Yeah.
Yes.
Just let me know when I get closer to the 3 minute mark. Um, so my current role at PAG is watershed planning manager, and I used to oversee the GIS department as well for a couple of years. And then I really appreciate my role with the Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative, which I really wanted to give a shout out to because that's where we've done a lot of our regional planning and coordination these days, as our water department actually dwindled in size, but still able to have a broader reach through that group. But as far as green stormwater infrastructure, my role when I first started at PAG, 19 years ago was I wanted to integrate it into our stormwater quality outreach. This was like from sort of a policy level, a way to get involved in promoting, we would call it low impact development or just rainwater harvesting at the time. But it was this regulatory requirement that we thought, all right, this is a way to get folks to get really on board because it's a suitable best practice to achieve water quality goals. And we have impairment of the Santa Cruz River for stormwater sources of E. coli, not the wastewater source, but the stormwater was contributing it, like through potentially dog feces, pet waste. We don't know. It still needs to be traced. We don't know the genetic source, but it could be traced with the right study. So that was my foot in the door. Then I got involved with a lot of the city and county water study, which asked for more LID pursuits, including creating guidance and sort of standardizing it as a actual municipal practice. And then we got involved over the years with a lot more data provision. So PAG acquires LiDAR for the whole region, which is like remote sense data that tells you color spectrums and heights and everything of the features on the ground. And from that, we analyzed tree presence in the region. So we had some numbers of trees and canopy cover numbers to help provide to the jurisdictions. So my role has been not really policy creating, but helping to create standards and numbers so that other municipalities could then use the data to create policies, goals, management, projects, that kind of thing. That's a broad overview.
Thank you, Mead. I want to check in to see if Nicole Gillett, sorry, I'm still not sure. Is it Gillette?
Well, we're giving it another go. Can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Sometimes you just need to hit restart, and just things get easy.
Okay.
So it is Gillette, Nicole Gillett.
Okay, thank you. Nicole Gillett is Tucson's very first urban forestry program manager, which basically means she's on a mission to make the desert a little shadier, a good kind of shady, of course. From coordinating tree care across city departments to teaming up with community groups, Nicole works to implement Tucson's Community Forest Action Plan, helping to grow a healthier, greener city for all of us. And she brings a deep love of our shared environment, backed by a bachelor's degree in environmental science and a master's in geography. When Nicole's not out exploring to Tucson's tree canopy, she's likely curled up at home with a good book, a cup of tea, and her two cats soaking up the sunshine. Because we have two Nicoles on tonight's panel, I've arranged for us to, if it works, we can see what works, to address Nicole Gillett as Nicole City because of her focus, and the other Nicole, who I will introduce next, we can call Nicole County. Not the greatest arrangement, but maybe it'll help us avoid confusion. Nicole, do you have I put the question in the chat, so if you're ready to go, you're on.
We'll be ready to go. Nicole and I play this game all the time, so we can just both answer questions at random. I think we're both fine with that. We can assume each other's personality. Yes, thanks, Joanne. So my name's Nicole Gillett, and I'm the city's urban forestry program manager. So to sort of get right at the heart of the question, I manage and work with all of our city departments across city managed trees. So while trees in nature don't notice boundaries per se, I think it's interesting that Nicole Mead and I all work on different jurisdictional boundaries and different jurisdictional levels. And so I'm more focused on the sort of day-to-day management of trees in our urban landscape. So again, thinking city managed trees, I work across what are called our service departments. So you can think of your Tucson Waters, your Parks and Rec, your Transportation, Housing, Community Development, our core departments that offer services. All of those departments also, have some jurisdiction over our landscape in some way. So while I sit in what is the city manager's office, I work across all of our service departments and our internal departments to manage all those aspects of trees and landscape. And so I think as was mentioned in my introductory paragraph, This was a brand new position when I started this role in 2020. So we've been building up what is an urban forestry program from the ground up, as well as working to implement the mayor's Million Tree Initiative. So we've been building all the pieces to start having a really strong and robust urban forestry program that involves all this kind of maybe the more behind the scenes, less exciting stuff, such as getting a plan and doing data collection and all the stuff that you sort of need to have an exciting program, getting all our ducks in a row. That included writing our first community forest action plan. So that's the basis for all of my actions moving forward. But it also includes our community partners as well, because I work not just internally, but externally with all of our community partners that are planting and managing trees in some way. And when it comes down to that, that's each and every one of us, right? So a large part of my job is working with folks on the ground, getting the work done. And one of my little mottos is, if all of us in Tucson planted 2 trees, we would hit Tucson million trees tomorrow. So that's my approach to this work. And I think I'll end on that note and pass it over to our other Nicole.
Nichole Casebeer, also known tonight as Nicole County, is a landscape architecture project manager with Pima County's Regional Flood Control District, and there she leads equity-centered design and community engagement for the district's green infrastructure and restoration projects. Before joining the county, Nicole worked as the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program Manager at Tucson Clean and Beautiful, and as a community restoration project manager at Watershed Management Group. Nicole holds a master's in landscape architecture and dual bachelor's degrees in international relations and architecture, and she grounds her work at the intersection of people, place, and policy. I think I mentioned she also will be known tonight as Nicole County. You are on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dwayne. And thank you, Paula and Trace, for coordinating. So excited to be here with you all. Yeah, again, my name's Nicole. I use she, they pronouns. And in terms of what I do to support cooling in Tucson, I'll give a little bit of background on Pima County Regional Flood Control District and kind of what we do broadly, and then what my role within the county, just the flood control district is about. So Regional Flood Control District, our lands are obviously all of Pima County, and then regulated floodplains within that boundary. And so we're coordinating with a whole bunch of agencies, inter-county coordination, tribal coordination, city coordination. I think when it comes to water, like Nicole Gillett was saying, water doesn't pay attention to jurisdictional boundaries, and yet you'll find at least 10 overlapping regulatory or jurisdictional entities managing the same body of water kind of in coordination. So at the end of the day, we're really just looking at our watersheds across Pima County and how do we keep them healthy and functional. Our goal and slash mission at flood control is really maintaining natural hydrologic processes. So the highest and best use of our floodplains is not development. It is restoration, recreation, natural benefits. And so that is really the focus of our work, is protecting, maintaining, and managing our floodplains and kind of natural riparian areas and other areas that collect and store a lot of flood water for public green space, recreation, and habitat. And then within the district, the capital improvements project team, that's the team I work on, invests. We have a budget about 13 million annually to invest in infrastructure and projects to maintain these systems in ways that protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So a lot of that is flood mitigation, but within our kind of a newer program that's come out of the district, I guess it's recently been named the Stormwater Parks Program. That is our green infrastructure program. So that's really focused on neighborhood scale green infrastructure projects that utilize stormwater runoff from neighborhoods to create community green space amenities for neighborhoods. And our focus is largely on historically disinvested areas of Tucson that lack shade, that lack green space. And so we're really focused on investing our resources in leveraging green infrastructure to be bring benefits to kind of Tucson's most vulnerable neighborhoods. And so the program is multidimensional, and we're working on expanding it. Kind of at its foundation, it's really about urban cooling, shade, access to green space, but with an equity overlay. It's also about leveraging these investments to create economic and social opportunity for historically disadvantaged groups across Tucson.
Great.
Yeah, and so I think, yeah, I'll just leave it at that and move on to the next question. Thank you.
All right. So for Mead, let's put it in the chat here. What is a recent success that you're celebrating?
Well, actually, I keep drawing on older successes that are still useful.
You could go with that.
So, we had a regional accomplish, and I think success that I want to keep living on is that it folks could cite about how many we have in the region, how many more it would take to reach using the mayor's goals.
Mead, I think we're having a bit of a
me
connectivity problem, and your sound is coming through a bit garbled. Is that true for all of us? Yeah. I'm not sure it's going to work. Did she bump out of the meeting? Okay, well, let's hope when she comes back, she'll have a stronger connection. And Nicole Gillett, are you ready to talk about some successes you're celebrating?
Sure. I'm excited to celebrate here. So we're entering in 2025 is actually midpoint of Tucson Million Trees. We got a 10-year timeline, and midpoint was always sort of my point to sort of check in with myself and our partners and have, some reflection as well as, a big push for future planning. When I came onto this role again, the program was brand new, everything was brand new, and we were sort of faced with what felt like a very daunting challenge, right? So how do you plant 1 million trees? And beyond that, of course, that tagline is very inspiring. It gets people involved. We all want to be a part of planting 1 million trees. Planting a tree is a very tangible action that, every person can be involved in, and it makes measurable impacts in our fight against climate change. That's all well and good. Sounds great, makes great photo shoots. All those things are excellent. It's important to maintain movement and excitement, which are an important part of getting anything done. But on my end, I was like, not only do we need to get 1 million trees planted to the ground, that's our baseline, right? I need to maintain our existing canopy, because if our ultimate goal is canopy increase, we can plant 1 million trees, but if all of our existing trees die, that doesn't get us very far, right? And we also need to get those baby trees to maturity. And I'll get to the celebration piece in just a second, but maybe a slight reality check for all of us as well, right? We are about an average 6% canopy across the city right now. That is not equally born across our entire city. We have parts of our city in Midtown, foothills, north and west part of our east parts of town that have upwards of 25% canopy. Great if you're able to feel those benefits and bask in that shade. There are parts of town that have literally 0% canopy, right? So that's not a single piece of leaf over your head. So not only are we at quite a low canopy range, it's not borne equally across our city. And I would, the actual American forest goal for a quote unquote desert city, which is us, is 15% canopy average. So while we have a million tree, what I call our short-term goal, right? The short-term goal of a million trees, long-term, we're looking much closer to 3 million trees to get us to the 3% or the 15% average canopy across town. Now, that again, while all well and good, it's very difficult to set measurable goals and make benchmarks if you don't know where you're starting, right? So when we talk about an average 6% canopy, it's not equally borne. That's only so useful when it comes down to what I need to know to actually plant individual trees to get us there, right? And also know which trees are providing our shade right now. So what I'm celebrating, as that was all that backstory to get us to the point, is that we've completed our first ever city tree inventory. So again, it's very hard to be like, okay, we're going to go plant 1,000 trees in this area if you don't actually know where those trees are needed, right? So a baseline inventory, while not that all that exciting just in and of its own words, is a really critical first step towards building a sustainable long-term program. Because now moving forward, we have our baseline data set. I'm able to know and measure each of those individual tree stands and also make measurable planting goals and track those throughout time. And so we have many different data sets that we pull on to help with these decision-making processes. That's me's area of expertise, of course. But for me, this was a big leap forward in being able to make informed decisions moving forward. So we're celebrating our first tree inventory, and I invite everyone to watch us sort of as we start publicizing that data, because that'll be a fun interactive activity for everyone.
Congratulations on that milestone. Did we get Mead back?
I'm back. Am I more clear?
Yes. Let's give you a try now. The question again was, what's a recent success that you're celebrating? And we kind of heard some of the words, but let's see if it comes through more clearly now.
I'll try. I consider it a great success when the city and county can use the data that we provide. So some of that was, percent tree canopy, number of trees. But my goal is also to get the other jurisdictions across the county to be able to use the data. So using the city and county as models for what can be done. For example, we calculated that there are about 3 million existing trees in our urban area. So one recent success is we got a grant with Santa Cruz Watershed Collaborative to increase drought outreach. And this ties right into what others are working on panel too. But to do drought outreach to basically save our trees in the face of climate change, but especially in acute local drought. There's not a lot of messaging for drought locally since it's mostly tied to Colorado River supplies, but we know when we're facing intense acute drought in our own environment. So that's a recent success. It's just kicking off, and you might have already seen some outreach in like your Tucson water bill, and you'll hopefully more to come. Sustain the 3 million trees that we've got.
Thank you. On to our next question.
Yeah.
Or let's see, no, we didn't hear from Nichole Casebeer yet, right?
Yeah, Dwayne.
I'll get on the ball here. Things get out of order. You're on.
Just kidding. I guess I'm really excited about some of the community programs we've been developing at the county. One program that recently launched is what we're calling the water program. And I guess before I explain that, I'll say that community engagement, especially in underserved areas, is extraordinarily hard. There are very many barriers to participation, and it's essential that we get, community feedback and make sure that these spaces do indeed match the vision and needs of the community where we'll be installing them. And we really strive to partner with community so that we can, have support long-term stewardship and get people excited about these spaces and make sure that the design of these spaces is what people want and need. But getting people out to talk to us about what they want and need is very hard. And so we're trying to develop this, what we're calling an advocates network, where we can help provide training and education, paid opportunities, so that we essentially have a network of advocates who are members of these frontline communities, that can be empowered to participate directly in the planning, design, and implementation of these projects, and ideally maybe become leaders in their communities, and ideally become professionals that are supporting work in climate change and doing advancing green infrastructure work across the community long term. And so our first step, I guess, towards really building that advocates network is this water program. And so we're partnering with a few nonprofits to develop teacher professional development workshops. We're partnering with high schools in underserved areas, so areas like Amphi or Sunnyside, where, as Nicole mentioned and I have mentioned, there's literally 0% tree canopy in some of those areas. And so we're recruiting from those schools, those teachers, those students, and then getting them mentorship, paid training, and other opportunities so that they can participate in these projects and hopefully help us understand what the community needs and become a bridge to making these investments all the more impactful. So not just, as I mentioned, not just in terms of how much rainwater are we harvesting and how much shade are we planting, but who is that benefiting, both short term, and how can those investments be leveraged long term to create economic opportunity for the residents immediately around these projects. So really excited to be supporting those programs and that work right now.
Excellent. Okay, so some of you talked, in addition to recent successes there, about kind of where you're headed, what you're aiming for, and that, of course, that's a natural tendency. So the question this time is, what program goal is top priority for you and now, and what's the benefit that goal will bring to the city and or county and or everyone in the area? And let's try to get back to our original sequence with Mead, if you're ready.
Sure. So we have a integrated planning program that I'm a part of. So there are diverse goals that I like to recommend as priorities. One is tying right into what Nicole County was saying about equity. Well, I guess we're all saying about equity is we could really focus on bus stops and locations where people rely on active modes of transportation. So that's sort of something I advocate among our transportation planners, is to look out for people who are really most exposed to the heat in their mobility options. And then speaking for our water section, I think a really important part of planning for access to green space and access to nature is looking at our creeks, our washes, and our shallow groundwater areas, and ensuring that we use green stormwater infrastructure to make those areas more resilient and to ensure that those canopies last through climate changes. So those are sort of the geographic locations that I tend to prioritize within the programs that we have at PAG.
Thank you. And just trying to get us back. We're close to being on track with time. Nicole Gillette, I might start timing just a little bit less than 3 minutes, but you're welcome to proceed.
this is going to be a tie back to what I mentioned before, where if everyone planted 2 trees, we would reach Tucson million trees tomorrow. So my big point, now that we're at the midpoint of Tucson million trees, is sort of a re-engagement effort. And so again, I think this is a very exciting topic for a lot of people, but we haven't necessarily had all the tools in our toolkit to really get a concerted planting effort off the ground. I wasn't confident in our systems to be able to absorb a million baby new trees that were going to theoretically be under public and private responsibility. But now what we have sort of our background systems in place and we're standing on more solid soil, we're sort of re-engaging on the planting side of work. So moving forward here, you'll be starting to notice another big push on getting people involved in Tucson Million Trees. And I actually have been calling this since I think the first time I presented with you guys, but Tucson Million Trees, choose your own adventure. So I think, as Nicole's also mentioned, green space across our city is going to look very different depending on what needs we are trying to meet. So this is going to be our big push to get every tree counted and every single person in Tucson involved in Tucson Million Trees. Make sure that they have access to the tree, which is a tree supply question. They have the access to the education and resources to plant and give that tree the initial care that it needs. And then the long-term support to help that tree get it to maturity. And once those trees reach maturity is when we actually start seeing our ecosystem services that we're all familiar with. That baby tree is not quite giving us all the shade that we need to reach our 15% canopy. So not only do we need to plant all these trees, we need to help them grow up. So that's my big push for 2025.
Beautiful vision. And I think there'll be some follow-up to that one as we go forward. Nichole Casebeer. What program? Did I? Yes.
Yeah. So right now the Pima County has a wider initiative and it's called the Prosperity Initiative. And that's a countywide goal to end or reduce intergenerational poverty. And I think a lot of people are like, what does that have to do with like green infrastructure and green space? But a huge part of that is laying foundations of both physical and social infrastructure that support vulnerable communities. And we think that green infrastructure is a great investment for communities, especially considering how much we see the connection between childhood health and development and lack of access to green space and health problems and exposure to heat and other issues that these frontline communities are facing. And so I think we consider like trees and rainwater harvesting some of the most important foundational investments we can make to reduce generational poverty across the county. And so we're trying now to kind of frame these investments through that multi-dimensional equity lens to start helping people make that connection more substantially.
Beautiful again. And okay, so this one is about what more needs to be done. How can nonprofits, folks who are interested, plug in, help out these visions to come into reality? And that will take us to our Q&A afterward. Mead, I want to invite you to address us all in the room, assuming that we're ready to jump out there and get our hands dirty and give us marching orders.
Well, one reason I love working in this topic is I think it is something that is in all of our hands, and it sort of empowers us in the water realm, which is sometimes something that can feel like you can't have control of. But I think since we have across the urban area, which I mean outside of the city of Tucson as well, since we have about 3 million trees, if we could all help with stormwater capture around those trees in an appropriate way and, using good guidance if you're not sure what to do, that would make a huge difference. Because we don't want to increase our stress on water supply, and that's one way to do it. Another thing is to know that this is a very honorable use of our water supply, sustaining our trees. It is probably something we've invested a lot of water in, and it's worth using more water because of all the massive benefits of trees. And then finally, I think it would be really beneficial to spread these efforts to other smaller jurisdictions like South Tucson and the Tohono O'odham and the Pasquayaqui tribe, because those are jurisdictions that could also benefit from your efforts and collaboration.
Wonderful. Nicole Gillett, we're all ears.
There you go. So I have a two-part ask. One is something that I think Sustainable Tucson is already really excelling at, but let's maybe take it even more literally, and it's to go meet your neighbor. I think community organizing is the most important aspect of any of this work. We all bring our own perspectives and our extensive knowledge and expertise in certain areas. And what we need to be doing is spending more time listening to each other and sharing our resources. And so again, if every person in Tucson were to plant 2 trees, but that's going to look very different depending on who's planting that tree and where it is. And so I would say go meet your neighbor and start having these conversations at the very hyper local level, because what it looks like in each neighborhood and in everyone's front and backyards is going to look different. And that's how we sustain canopy in the long run, is stewardship. My second ask is something maybe much less passionate, but it's to pick a planning board and commission and start attending those public meetings. I think a lot of people underestimate the power of local civic involvement, and why we might keep ourselves in our safe spaces, and sort of talking to the people who we know. It is within the hollowed chambers of the planning zoning board commissions that very important decisions get made across all of our jurisdictions, including future roadway projects, including density projects, including green space prioritization. And so if you are unfamiliar with the city, county, or any of your jurisdictions, planning and just general, I forget the acronym, but it's all of our boards and commissions, of which one I'm sure there is one that is of interest to you, but I'll just say I've never had a more riveting conversation than at the Sign Board Planning Commission meeting, which you've probably never even heard of. So I would empower every person in here to go join a different board and commission and just listen for many meetings, attend the meetings, sit in, listen to what they're talking about, and find your in and talk to the people that are making those decisions, because those are the ones who are advising mayor and council. Mayor and council advises the city manager, and the city manager is the one who tells me what to do, right? So it's that trickle-down effect. And it's great to have all of us here, and I love hanging out with Nicole and Mead all the time. But at the end of the day, we are staffers, and so we listen to the public, and that is our job. So thanks, everyone.
Nice. And Nichole Casebeer, we are ready to hear your orders for us. We've got a lot already, but we're writing them down.
Dwayne, I'm going to say go to a park, use the amenities that are in the community for you, and if they aren't working for you, then tell us that they aren't, because we can't. I think in my line of work, I often see that parks are kind of in disrepair and get in these cycles of being underutilized and disinvested in because they're not used. And so they're not safe, or they're not friendly, they're not inviting. And so I think that the more we use these public spaces and also the more we use these places we would like to see preserved, so areas adjacent to watercourses or washes or other places where nature likes to take over. That's all part of our green infrastructure network. That's all an opportunity for us to like grow shade, reclaim habitat, create amenities for the community. And so I'd say like use parks and then also like look for the crappiest places you can imagine and then envision them as something else. Like that, like the county is basically in the business of taking underutilized, vacant, abandoned parcels. It's a dirt lot, and turning it into something usable. So I would say keep an eye out for those sad places, and put your imagination glasses on every time you're looking out in the community and seeing an opportunity where that vacant parcel could be a pocket park, that right of way could have additional shade, that, and then your Pima County supervisor, knowing your Pima County supervisor, and definitely know your ward representative because they're going to be the two primary touchstones that, as Nicole said, knock on our doors and give us directives for how we're going to spend our money. And of course, talk to Nicole and Mead and I because you have our numbers now. But definitely use those main channels because unfortunately, the system operates through political will for the better or worse. And so you are the will, and we depend on you to tell us how our community's future is going to lay out.
Wow. I don't know about everybody in the room, but I've heard a lot of encouragement, and I want to open it up now. We're right on our schedule, and what does that? What words have spoken to you? I guess maybe if we can start with questions. If there are questions that you'd like to either specific or general, the group to give an answer, we can go that way, and then gradually go into more sharing ideas about how to follow up some of these directives. Floor is open.
Dwayne, with the floor open, I want to just mention that Shannon Jenkins posted in the chat a link to where you find all the city boards and commissions. And since we were encouraged to find one or more of them that we would want to at least listen to and react to, I think just wanted to make sure everyone sees that in the chat so you can see what the options are.
Thank you, Shannon. You must have spoken so clearly that nobody has any questions. If we don't have any questions, why don't I think Stephanie, you're muted. It sounds like you're ready to speak. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to plant 2 trees. I have a duplex. There's room for 2 trees. I've talked to the tenant. He's really gung ho. Do I look at the Tucson Million Trees website? What do I do?
That's a great question. I will put a link in the chat to our website, which I will say is in dire need of update because I haven't touched it since 2021. It's one of my 2025 goals to get the website updated. But at the very least on there are other links to other great places, and there's also a place for you to share when you have planted your 2 trees. And so we can start counting them. So I'm going to put 2 links in the chat. One is to our Million Trees hub site, and one is to Tucson Clean and Beautiful, who is our fiscal sponsor for Tucson Million Trees, and has some great information on the best trees to plant in for your space.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's really been a great meeting.
I invite folks to use the raise hand, and once you've done given your question, etc., you can raise your literal hand or use the screen. But go ahead, Jesse.
Hi. I live in Swanway Park and we have Arcadia Wash, and I've noticed on the planning and zoning maps that there's little tiny, I think, city properties and maybe even a state property that kind of are adjacent to that arroyo. So the part about the pocket parks or investigating into what those property, the condition of them are. And so I'm wondering who I would reach out to kind of dig into that process. Maybe that's a question for Nicole City, since I think she offered that bit of information.
I'm going to pass it to Nicole County. Do you have thoughts on that? Because I know that you guys have your mapping effort going on right now.
Yeah, so you could definitely send parcels to me, and I can research opportunities for flood control investments. On the city side of things, I could pass it back to Nicole, but I used to be over there. So the Tucson Clean and Beautiful mini grants program is funded through Tucson Water, and they can help you invest in small scale neighborhood green infrastructure projects too.
Thank you.
Trace and Paula, is your hand up again? Go ahead, Trace.
Yeah, two questions, I think both for Nicole Gillette. One is, when we succeed at these million trees, what will we have accomplished? And the second question is, well are the trees you're planting surviving?
Yeah, both two important questions. So I think the easiest answer to your first question is we plant 1 million trees will be a third of the way to my 15% canopy goal. So I'll throw more numbers back at that answer. But of course, very tangibly, a single tree in anyone's backyard, especially if you are without any trees right now, can make a very tangible difference in one person's everyday life. And so to me, that's really where the success is. And so I count every tree individually as a success and all those benefits that it will bring down the road to whoever is walking nearby, under, or around that tree. The wildlife who will use that space will benefit from each of those trees. So we will have accomplished quite a lot once we get to 1 million trees. The second question on survival rates is, I hate to give you this answer, but it really depends, right? So we have good data in some areas and less good data in others. And so largely thanks to Mead and PAG's efforts over the years, our data has improved over the years on how we're able to understand how our trees are doing out in the environment. I'll say what we do know is that that planting of that tree, right, is the most important day of that potted tree's life, right? So the care that we put into tree planting is very, very critical. And I think maybe we've undervalued that a little bit over time, where we've treated, we can just slap a tree in the ground, it'll figure itself out, as it grows up. But really, we understand now that that initial planting, that being planted correctly, with good care and soil, that first watering is the most important watering it will ever get. And so that initial planting effort is very, very important. And so that will largely determine how it survives down the road. Otherwise, across the board, survivability depends a lot on location, irrigation, and who is taking care of it. And so like in your typical right-of-way project, we can see upwards of like 94% survivability, but also as low as 60. And so it really varies across the board.
I have one question related to that. If we plant a tree in our front yard, how do we add it to the million trees list? If I just went out tomorrow and got a tree and installed it.
Yeah. So that's that first link. I hope it's the first link I put in the chat to our website. There's a little tab called Report Your Tree, and I'll get a direct notification for it.
Thank you.
Anne Moynihan, please go ahead.
Hey, so you've been talking about perhaps underserved neighborhoods. And I know 29th Street Thrive efforts have planted maybe 100 trees recently. So is there a really good coordination with all of the different efforts that are going on? And would that be Nicole Gillett who would be watching this? And then also when we're talking about a million trees, we're talking about within the city limits. So flood control does a lot of restoration within the limits. Are those efforts being considered? And lastly, Jesse and I live near each other, and we've talked about the washes that run through our neighborhoods being able to be more of an amenity if they could remain clean. So I think we need to look at people using washes for things that aren't benefiting habitat. And I guess I'm talking about unsheltered people, so that's a huge effort. Otherwise, but I'd say we experience degradation to our habitat from different forces. So I think it's such a multifaceted issue that I'm just hoping we have good coordination.
I think we could all take a piece of that. But again, so this year my effort is to try to get a better handle on all the trees that are going in the ground. And I think, yes, in an ideal world, we're all coordinating all the time and everyone is talking. But one of my great success stories is when every one of each of my departments actually shows up to a job site. So I'll say coordination sounds great on paper and is very difficult in practice, as I'm sure we are all familiar with. So I just can happen to say that on the 29th Street Thrive project in particular, we are, because that's also one of my own grant projects going on in that same area. So we are overlapping in our efforts there in our investments. So that one happens to be going quite well, but it is going to be a big push just to get everyone's name and numbers where they belong. And I think one of those could be between Nicole and I counting all of our overlapping trees, but I'll pass it over to you, Nicole, to answer the other part of the question.
Yeah, so the Pima County Regional Flood Control District has an intergovernmental agreement established with the city's Green Infrastructure Program, aka Storm to Shade. And so we build the infrastructure and maintain kind of the foundational infrastructure long term, and then we hand it over to them to maintain the landscape, including all of the beautiful trees and plantings that we just did. And in the process of that handoff, they're inventorying all of those trees, and that data is being added to Nicole Gillette's tree count. So we're all on, at least on the green infrastructure, large scale green infrastructure side of things, I would say we are exceptionally coordinated. And then the majority of these, what we're calling stormwater park priority kind of disinvested area projects, have been coordinated between the city and the county for the past 5 years now or so. And so we're just growing our partnership base, learning how to work together and leverage and bring in even more people. And so I think we've got a really great model, and it's only gonna get better. Mead, did you have anything to add on that front?
I think Mead may be frozen.
Either frozen or just you're muted and not aware that you're muted, or maybe she's away. Any other? Maybe she'll come back and be able to address that. But if there are other questions, or I would say sometimes talking about out loud about one of the ideas that you heard in one of the panelists' answers might be a way to get you thinking about how excited you might be to get involved in some of these things. So I invite you also to speak to any recommendation that you heard that touched your sensibility of, hey, maybe this is for me, and just kind of try it out by sharing how that made you feel when you heard it.
No, there's also a question from Marla in the chat. how does one go about requesting a curb cut so that there would be better irrigation for the tree? And how much does it cost? Is that something one of you can answer?
Were you gonna go for it, Nicole?
I can start. It depends on where that curb cut is. And so if it's in your right of way next to your property, technically you'll be the one footing the bill and taking care of that tree and curb cut basin system. I would say there are rebates, right, through the city, so you can apply for a permit to do the curb cut, and get your permit, have it cut, and then get a rebate to be reimbursed for that. The cost of like a single curb cut though is going to be far less efficient than getting all your neighbors on the street or other neighbors in your neighborhood together to do curb cuts together so that you can share the bill. I think Brad Lancaster in Dunbar Springs is a fabulous example of that, where literally every year he does an annual basin build across the neighborhood where neighbors all submit for the permit together and then split the cost of the permit and the installation. Yeah. So yes, and then if it's on somebody else's property, then they would need to get that permit. Nicole, did you want to chime in with follow-up comments on that?
Nope, I would just encourage folks to go take our water harvesting rebate class. That'll teach you a lot about these things, and it's also a prerequisite to getting your rebate. And it's a great way to bring in a professional as well so that you don't have to handle that side of the work, and then get a great project installed and get reimbursed for it.
David has a question.
Yeah, David Stein, go for it. Unmute.
Thanks. Actually, Dwayne, this is for you. You opened this meeting with
Oh,
Screen freeze. It may be on my end.
so
thank you for sharing that picture with us.
And you can lower your hand, David. Any other thoughts? Any other marching orders that anybody might have, or invitations to collaborate in your neighborhoods? The expressions of interest in doing some community organizing, doing some planting, anything? Go for it, Trace.
Yeah, I want to invite people to participate in a project for Sustainable Tucson called Building Resilience by Building Community. It's a if you live in a neighborhood and like trees, this is a project for you. The goal is to organize neighborhoods or small groups within neighborhoods to actually transform Tucson into an oasis in the desert, one neighborhood at a time. So the goal is to first help people envision the sustainable future they want, and then to find resources in town, like from the city and Trees for Tucson, but there are many others, so that you'll actually be able to implement your projects. So if you're interested, you can find out more about the project. Either contact me at trace@sustainabletucson.org, and I'll put that in the chat here, or check out our website under the committees, the Building Resilience Working Group. We'll tell you all about it, and you can contact me through that as well. But we're looking for people who want to make their neighborhood beautiful, safe, shaded, and fun. So please contact me.
Thanks for sharing that, Trace. Again, that's Trace at sustainabletucson.org. We're going to have an opportunity for announcements after we're done with the Q&A, but I want to keep it open here in case anybody has a hand to raise to say something or ask something. That being the case, Paula, can I turn it over to you for you may have some announcements to share and invite others if they have some brief announcements also.
Well, I want to mention our next Sustainability Spotlight program in July. It'll be July 8th, and we're going to hear from Dan Stormont, a very active member of Sustainable Tucson, and also of Watershed Management Group. And he's going to be talking about watershed restoration and resilience in the Tucson area. And so it will be a nice segue from the importance of water for trees and more general looking at our watersheds. So I want you all to hope all of you will join us for that. And does anyone else have an announcement of something important coming up or anything important coming up? No,
I would invite everyone to be sure and know about No King's Day this coming Saturday. There will be a gathering in Reed Park. I believe it begins at 8 or 8:30, 8 o'clock, I think is sort of meet and greet. 8:30, there's going to be some organized activity through to about 11:30.
And if you are in other parts of the area, there's going to be a No King's activity in, let me see if I can get them all. Oro Valley, Sarita, Green Valley, I think Sierra Vista possibly. And then in Tucson, again at Reed Park at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there'll be the start of a drive-through activity. So if there's anyone who did not get our last newsletter, you can let me know, Paula at sustainabletucson.org, and I'll add you to the list. But also the newsletter has links to the various activities here and around the country, and also a link to the map of the drive-through demonstration.
And just to be clear that the reason the Sustainable Tucson members advocate for this event is not a partisan political project. It is recognition that to reach goals like those that have been talked about tonight requires the maintenance of a social structure and laws that are respected and a constitution that maintains itself in order for us to continue to be able to do our work as free citizens. That's what I just wanted to clarify. Other announcements? Jesse?
May have already been suggested, but isn't there the webinar for the Tucson Clean and Beautiful mini grant, the Safe Streets program tomorrow evening, I believe.
4:30 or 5:30. Yeah.
And just a clarification on that, that's Department of Transportation and Mobility's Safe Streets mini grants program,
Okay.
which is different than the TCB mini grants, but sometimes you can co-apply and leverage both funding sources to do greenage. So pro tip on that.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, it's 5:30 on Zoom. I think it's Zoom.
All right. And I invite everyone present to every once in a while go check out sustainabletucson.org. there's quite a bit there in terms of energy, water, food, waste, pollution, and just educate. Of course, it's not the only place, but it's one local place that we have options available. So I just want to make sure that you take advantage of the programs that are there.
And in
And
fact,
maybe you'll be a presenter at one of these in the coming years.
actually, that's a good segue to, and a reminder to me. If anyone is concerned about zero waste issues, whether it's plastic, food waste, other waste issues like what's going on with our landfills, our Zero Waste Committee is going to be having its monthly meeting on Monday, the 16th at 6 o'clock. And it will be on Zoom, so you can email me or email me, Paula at sustainabletucson.org, and I'll add you to the list to get the link for that meeting.
Well, we did not get Stuart in. I hope he's having a safe drive home. And fortunately, none of us here have to risk anything on the road because we met this way. I do hope that we get in-person meetings happening again. If you have an opinion about the potential for in-person meetings, you could send it to one of us or send it to Trace, send it to me, Dwayne at sustainabletucson.org, Duane. Oh, I know. Are our speakers still here? If you would like to share your email and invite those present to reach, you already have done so, or even if you have already done so. And of course, no obligation, but an invitation. And I think with that, we might be ready to call it a night.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming and have a great, sustainable rest of summer.
You want what?
Thank you all and have a good evening. I want to look at this.
Thank you.
Get the chat.
Oh, okay.
I will get the chat.
Okay.